Good morning, everyone.
Good
Thank
morning.
everybody for joining this morning. Um, Before we get going, I know last week there was a lot of information deposited on us, and any questions or comments from last weekend or Monday? Okay. One of the things I was hoping to get accomplished today was to kind of go back to where we started in the beginning of this lesson, and sort of look at where we are now as we've kind of evolved and we've had the conversations for several weeks now. Um, just to just to put in context what we talked about earlier regarding the 8 cents, and just to make sure that everything, the goals that we kind of set out, which when you set goals, it's in this arena, it kind of like it takes a different direction sometimes. So you really we've gone with the flow, but just really just to kind of assess where we are now, and to see if there are any questions even going back that will come up from where we started in the beginning. And then when we started with the 8 cents in the beginning, it was really a journey about learning about oneself. We talked about it would be teaching us or making us aware of connections and communicate with others, utilizing our powers. And we were doing a lot of these things through the tools of memory, intuition, trust, and becoming what we needed to become. And, I think early on we put a heavy focus on, and that was sort of my intention too, was to put a heavy focus on acquiring a knowledge for oneself, personal expression, and willingness to be open and motivated to learn about yourself initially, and also teaching yourself as far as I think we use the term maybe autodidact, but just sort of a self-taught lesson on yourself, to be aligned. And then one of the things several of the things we talked about as far as a goal standpoint, and that could help us get there, was sharpening the intuition, looking at the memory process, learning who you are in a given moment, and really once we know who we are, we'll get a sense of when to interject, when to demonstrate who we are. We'll get a sense of when to do that. And then also feeling the connection. And I think the last several weeks we've really emphasized that feeling of the connection, and why we are connected and how important that is. And then being able to use someone else's power, the example, or over the last couple of weeks, see how they really express and use their energy in given situations, and accepting our status and our abilities, and the awareness of who we are, and being functional in that, really accepting that. And one of the other things and final things that we talked about early on was our creative process, our creation, the things that we speak into reality. And when I look back over these different discussions and the goals and the agenda that was kind of set in the beginning, I don't think I really tried to follow this list, but it seems like every week um, someone kicked off the call or made a comment or a question that really guided us through each one of these steps, if you want to say, and it really just became an in-depth discussion. I mean, like we began talking about the intuition in the beginning, and how we really saw evidence of that in the Bible, but it seems like every week someone brought up a situation or a question that really led us down the line. And then so when I look at this overall, I said, okay, we were on the mark with this. And it is a we lesson because I think we just have, I think it resonates with each person and we sort of understand it and see it for ourselves. And it's really been a lesson that we've been taking a really good journey through this last several weeks. And just want to pause there. Any questions or any comments before we really get into a recap? But I really just wanted to go back initially so that we can see that, hey, it may not have been in any particular order, but these things, were touched upon. And I think they've started sort of a development in me. I know that I really kind of listen to myself more, and I can see these things each day becoming a reality for me, and I'm just the level of awareness that I have for them now has gotten better. But any questions or comments on that before we get into the recap?
As I want to ask a question about where we are in terms of our desires. The desires that we talked about we have for balance. I would like to ask the question, if anyone sees any changes or has or experiencing it that's based on or and that's the budget. Not just of course there, but more so in society itself, because that's our desired change. No voices?
Pastor, you kind of faded out, so I didn't hear everything.
I said that's our. I was asking a question about whether or not anyone sees our desired changes in society. See things have changing, or in the process of anything related to our desires. Well,
And I know I may have mentioned this a couple weeks ago, just from the employer-employee relationship, not going into the employment of it, but just the relationship. I have seen, trends even in where I am, but just even in general. And I know we talked a little bit about the Amazon situation a couple of weeks ago too, but I've seen and noticed more and more where either due to the perception of the worker shortage or just where companies are forced to treat people better, to acknowledge more of the importance of people that actually work and keep the company functioning, and just with even the guy this week being brought to Congress, speaking to Lindsey Graham. I see more empowerment with people in the taking of the ownership lately. I just see more awareness of people understanding that there's something in them driving them to be what they need to be. Because that Amazon guy, he obviously that's not a situation where he's trying to unionize for himself or something for self-gratification, but when he spoke the other day, I saw a guy really connected with his people, and that connection came through in everything he said. And I just saw him just being aware, hey, you know what? I'm going to push on for my people. And so from that connection, the level of accountability and awareness that we talked about, and just people really feeling that now is their time to interject and to really stand up. I've seen that a lot here lately, just in what we call the corporate America, and how that connection is really coming across now. And so I would definitely say that I've seen more awareness and evidence of connection from one end, and I've seen where more and more companies now are offering things that aren't, that go beyond the workplace, where they're more concerned about trying to provide mental health awareness, helping people cope with anxiety, giving people more time to, some companies are doing more and more meditation periods at lunch now for people. I think I told you the other day that I called about a tire place, and they were shut down for 3 hours so that people could worship or celebrate or do whatever they needed to do. And they just allow them that time. So I do see certain shifts in that regard. Anyone else?
Anyone else? Thank you, Ed. Sometimes when we look at what's happening, it appears as though things are going in the wrong direction. However, the eighth sense help us to see behind the scenes of what's going on. The uproar about abortion has led to many different areas of concern. I have never in my lifetime, nor have I read in my lifetime, about anything being leaked from the Supreme Court. 2 weeks ago, we talked about the Supreme Court and how it affects the world. America manipulates and controls the world. And if that is the case, and the Supreme Court is the highest level of law, of legalism in this country, where decisions are made that affects everyone in this nation, then that court would be the highest court in the world. Because it is the judiciary for America. One of the things that I see and I saw in relationship to this leakage was the person who was most upset about it than anyone was Mitch McConnell. And the reason is because he saw that this whole election coming up can change on a dime. And it put in jeopardy all of his desires. The extension of this leakage speaks to what's next. In certain places in the country, we're beginning to see it. What's next is everything, every law that was, every policy rather, that was handed down that does not literally appear in the Constitution And one in particular was talking about interracial marriage. The whole concept of the federal government having jurisdiction over elections. Well, that does not have to change because the Constitution specifically gives the federal government, oversight of elections if the Congress chooses to do it. The integration of schools. There are those who declare that there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the schools have to be integrated. So what I am beginning to see is a true shaking of the foundation of this nation. The foundation, because this nation was built on a foundation of wealthy white men controlling the nation. Females were property. African Americans were enslaved. Poor white people could not vote, they had no voice. And though it may not seem that there is a connection between this policy of abortion, there is definitely a connection between all of the things that I mentioned because of the specificity the specificity does not appear in the Constitution. So I see this change. I do not see it as going backwards, as does most of the people with whom I've spoken. I see it as a push forward because this is no different than COVID. COVID stopped everything, everybody, and forced them to think about their surroundings and how they were treated on their jobs and how difficult it was to sustain themselves in terms of making a living. And as a result of that, last year, 40 million people left their jobs. And several million more left this year. And people are simply walking away and forcing companies, as ST said, to reevaluate how they treat them and how much they pay them and what they offer in terms of insurance packages, etc. The reason I say it's no different than COVID is because I cannot think of one issue that would have caused this country to come to a halt and focus on it other than abortion. It has not only forced people to look at the issue of abortion, it has also forced people to see what's down the road if indeed this particular right is overturned. And there are already preparations to bring other cases to the court that are dealing with the things that I talked about earlier. Now, before I stop for questions, please understand something. Abortion is a right, not coming from the government, but a right that comes from creation. Because no one has the right to legislate what anyone can do in terms of their own body. I am saying this. The Christian right instituted this fight for abortion, starting with Jerry Falwell. Jerry Falwell said that he didn't see anything in the Constitution where white people and black people should integrate. And he had a lot to say about the separation of the races and racism. It was just a rant a whole interview rather that he did with someone about that. So now that the abortion issue is in the forefront, the dog is caught up with the car. So what are you going to do with it now? We don't have a right. The scriptures do not give us a right to legislate that people must be Christians or believe in what Christians believe in or do what Christians do. This is a Christian bill. If the Muslims were fighting for a right or to force someone to believe what they believe, then the whole picture would be different. So whether you believe in abortion or not, that's individual. That's up to you. However, it is not up to the government to force somebody to believe in something that is deemed to be spiritual. Thank you. Questions about that?
This is Barbara. As you were talking, it just reminded me of the witch trials all over the world, and then here in Salem, that this group of Christians forced their neighbors to kill people literally because of what they believed about them or said about them. And it was just so schizophrenic and birthed so much paranoia between people. So this issue of abortion seems to be the same thing that they're trying to foster onto people. But people are at a different place now than they were back then. And they can see further in terms of what truly, I believe, their rights are. And I mean, it underlies that whole thing that you just said. There is no coercion in spiritual things. You can't make people do anything. And if we made people do stuff, that's antithetical. It's totally against what the Creator gave us the opportunity to do, gave us the opportunity to choose to follow its teachings.
Hey, Rep, it's Charles. I feel like they're trying to take the human rights away, and they dictate what they want you to do and not do.
And that has always been the case in terms of dictation, Charles. You're right. When Barbara was speaking, it dawned on me that there were no male witches. All the witches were white women. Most of the witches who were people who were accused of being a witch were white women who were unmarried. Very few married white women were accused to be a witch and slaughtered because of it. That says to me that what Christians were saying is if you are not attached to a man, you are a witch. And the only way you can be protected against being a witch is that you have a male in your life. And during that period of time, I keep in mind that women were considered property. I have a book that was written in 1604, and it is about the legal system in England. And the one who wrote it, he was one of the chief writers or translators of English law, or interpreters, I should say, of English. And he wrote that a woman is the property of a man, and that honestly, it was only in recent years that a man could be charged with rape for raping his wife. Up until about 20 years ago, 25 maybe, a man could not be charged with that because that was his property. And no decisions could be made by female in terms of property. And I remember during my lifetime when I was like, 20 years old, women could not borrow money without a man's permission to do so. So all of these things that involve women are all woven into this abortion issue. There has never been any law passed or any decision handed down from the courts that limit what a male can do in terms of the control of his body. Thank you. Unless there are questions or comments.
Well, as you were talking, I had a question come to mind, like, what were the significance of nuns? For some reason, that came up. Like, I looked, you say women were considered property, and so were nuns sort of an exploited group as well, or is that their option to gain things like a man if they became a nun? I never really thought of the history of nuns until you were speaking at that moment.
You asked about the status of nuns?
Or just how nuns came about, and it seems like it would be a way for a woman to get benefits in the male-dominant world. But as you were speaking, for whatever reason, that came up. Like, I've never in my life questioned why or the purpose or the reason nuns came into existence. But when you were just talking, for some reason, that question popped in my head.
Well, nuns came into existence to serve priests. They came into existence to teach Catholic policy, Catholic doctrine in Catholic schools. As far as benefits are concerned, they were the workhorses for Catholicism. So there really were no benefits. There are those who would say, well, they had living quarters, but that doesn't make you free. Neither does that pay you for the labor that you engage in. The whole idea of the nunnery is a male-dominated system. Hello?
Excuse me, this is Ramel. Could you start over again? Because for some reason you dropped for a moment.
Where did I stop?
You were starting to explain about nuns, why they came into existence.
Okay, thank you, babe. Nuns came into existence because of male dominance. They were brought into existence in order to serve the priesthood and to teach children Catholic policy, Catholic doctrine. And when it talks about benefits, there were no benefits. Only thing they had were privileged to do was to sleep and eat and do their jobs. As far as pay is concerned, they did not receive any. However, when you look at the bishops and the priests, they do pretty much what they want to do in terms of travel. Their pay system is different in that the diocese, which is controlled by bishops, have budgets for priests to travel and for priests to have a livelihood. That budget does not include the nuns. For example, a priest can take you to dinner any way he wants to, but a nun can't do that without permission from other dioceses. So this whole system of nunnery, of Catholicism, is a system that is definitely dominated, controlled, manipulated by male testosterone. And if you look at how the system works, the system of Catholicism is protected from anything in law. Priests can rape kids and be sent to another place. So the system within itself is corrupt. And please hear me and hear me well. If Catholicism is the seed of Christianity, regardless of whether it's Protestant or Christian, or Catholic rather, if that is the seed of it, then why would we think that Christianity would be any different in terms of its the criminality involved in it, or the manipulation that's involved in it? Why would we think it would be any different when we understand the seed from which it's from? Why would we expect anything different from evangelicals or from the African church for that matter? Why would we expect anything different? Why would we not just see it for what it is? One of my kids is traveling in Brazil, and she said to me day before yesterday that she went into this church, this cathedral, and she heard this Brazilian lady confessing. In the confession, she could not understand what she was saying, but she could understand that she was distraught, and whatever she was going through was weighing heavy on her. And she says, why is it that people think that they can go to the priest and can't go to God for themselves? Of course, we went into a long conversation about it, but that in itself is a classic of what the corruption in the Catholic Church, the corruption in Christianity. And if you ever read the history of the confessional, then you will understand with a clarity why Martin Luther broke with the church and why it is that Christianity as a whole is the way that it is today. The reason people will tolerate Christian leadership that does not preach anything or teach anything is because they have been indoctrinated no differently than the nunnery or no different than any other group of people who have embraced Catholicism. The only reason that you are a Christian is because you were born into a family that's a Christian. The only reason you are Baptist or Methodist is because that's what your family was. Thank you. Did I break up that time for mail?
No, you did not. That was perfect.
Thank you.
I'd just like to add to that. Yeah, the system was corrupt from the beginning because it was instituted, as a form of male domination. And anytime a man had a daughter or even his wife who thought for herself, he could send her over there to the nunnery or banish her to the nunnery and be done with her. So it was a form of controlling women. But the other thing I wanted to point out, and I think it's a little short-sighted on the evangelicals' part, is that the Constitution says freedom of religion. It doesn't say freedom of Christianity. It just says freedom of religion. I guess which they interpret as Christianity, but that's not what it says. And I think that could be some of their undoing in terms of what they're trying to do right now.
But
Anyway,
that is, Audrey, that has been already approached. What people, what Republicans are saying is that in the beginning, the only religion in this country was Christianity. And when it said freedom of religion, it was talking about freedom of Christianity. They are already on that journey.
even so,
So-
it doesn't specifically say Christianity, so.
No way, no how does it say that. It does not. What I'm saying is that there is nothing that is antithetical, that they are not making every attempt to make a part of this society and to revert to what this country was. And see, this is one of the things that gets me. African people in particular are saying nobody's going back into slavery. That's not what they're talking about. You miss the whole point when you say we will never be slaves again. You already won. It's just a different type. So that in itself is missing the point. So please think about what you're saying. Think about what's being done before you make a comment like that. Thank you. Oh, and that was not directed towards Audrey. That was all of us. The people with whom I've spoken, who I've had to clear that up with. Thank you.
Hey, this is Nick. I just wanted to say, yeah, you can disregard any argument that any one of them uses that says either this or that is in the Constitution. Because as we all know, we sort of understand the motivations and the mindset behind their actions. And what is or is not written down on a piece of paper somewhere does not matter at all. And it's somewhat ironic that in the case of slavery, which is codified by our Constitution, they will be perfectly fine with that. And that sounds extreme. But as Pastor Richard just said, slavery has never left. It just got transferred to different institutions and sort of described differently, which is why the United States is one of the highest, if not one of the highest prison populations. It's just moved out of sight. And since it's out of sight, it's somewhat out of mind. But make no mistake, the they, quote unquote, is a white supremacist, quasi-theocratic form of authoritarianism. And that is what they want to impose over the United States first, and then the entire planet. And again, that sounds extreme and somewhat conspiratorial maybe, but that is what they want. And that is what they've been trying to do since they lost the Civil War. And I don't think it's going to come to that, but like I said, it's going to force, or like we have said, it's going to force us to recognize the ways in which all of this has already been done, the sort of underhanded, subtle ways that supremacist authoritarian control has already been imposed onto our society, or rather has never been lifted up from our society as a whole. And
I think I'm sorry, Nick.
no, go ahead, actually. Yeah, I'm finished.
I think part of the issue also is the fact that we've been talking about the awareness now of the importance of feminine energy and its contribution, if you will, toward wholeness, toward wholeness of humanity, toward wholeness in terms of how we treat each other, how we treat the planet, how we treat animals, how we treat everything. And so this is a backlash to that, because as you say, if we can strip away what this perceived right of females has been, then we can put them back in their place, in a sense. We can put the genie back in the bottle from the white authoritarian perspective, and get our country back, and turn our country back around to what it was before. But it is not going to be that easy, as you say. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. One of the things that I'm suggesting to us is, when you look at the European and you compare the European to the Puerto Rican, you compare the European to the Native American, you compare the European to the African American or the African. One of the things that separates myself from the European in cooking, I'm going to cook with my heart. European is going to cook by science. If you look at Robbie, Miss Richards, Miss Olivia, Miss Thelma, you give them a bag of popcorn to pop in the microwave, they ain't going to read no directions on it. They're just going to throw it up in there and they're going to cook it with their heart. So one of the things that I suggest that we explore, and I don't know if we've ever done it before, you need to know the advantages of being poor. See, when you're poor, you got to be creative. And you be creative because you got to rely on your heart. It's not to say people won't help you. You develop an immunity to survive. If the brothers and sisters on the Atlantic coast that went up north back in the day and them Jewish people raised the rent up on them, if the brothers did that to Jews, Jews would no longer exist. If the Native American did what Jeff Amherst or Jeffrey Amherst did to them back in 1763, I believe, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, with the blankets, the Europeans would no longer exist. So our survival from a historical aspect has been we poor. I'm a poor Negro. And I understand the advantages of being poor. Stronger acts of servitude. And there's certain eras that really understand it. Whether you went to college or didn't go to college, you understand what community property is if you come out of Mr. Dorr era, Reverend Richard era. Just community property, strong acts of servitude. So this has been our survival, and then unconsciously, this is how Greater New Faith and Foundation survives. Whether you want to admit it or not, we some poor Negroes or poor people. And when you're poor, you got to be creative. And the poorer you are, you understand rejection comes with it. And from an African American, go ahead, Reverend Richard. Well, from an African American male perspective, I'm glad my father rejected me. And what I mean by rejected, hey, Daddy, I need $20. You better get your butt out there in that yard and cut that doggone grass. He rejected me, yet he showed me a way out. See, if you don't reject the African American male growing up, he ain't gonna have no sensitivity toward feminine energy. This is the one gift that the African American male got. Not in potty training, just in growing up. You all got the gift of intellect and intelligence because you bought into it quicker. And the Creator will not show favor with one without giving something to the other that's going to show favor to the male, that's going to balance each other out. So, just
George,
be told.
I'll ask you a question when you finish.
Oh, go ahead, Rev. Go ahead. My bad.
I'm going to ask you a question. Go ahead.
No, what you want to ask the question to me? I ask the question to the group.
To you.
It doesn't matter. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay, what does it mean to be poor?
To be poor means to be humble. Poe ain't got nothing to do with no god doggone W-2. Every form of energy that I hang around, that I spend the most of my time with, barbershop, trucking family, Greater New Faith, and at one time my sports family. And the reason I say at one time, the kids done grown up with AAU ball. You can't stay in that arena forever. All us Poe. And when you see us together, you don't know who's the big eye and who's the big eye. So when I say Poe, I'm saying you maneuver humbly. You, like I say, it ain't got nothing to do with money now. Yet the European knows this because Aristotle and Alexander the Thief, they had a union together. One was the muscle, one was the brains. They took all them books from Timbuktu. Remember that you're looking at a historical aspect. We have survived this long, and the game out here kind of messing us up. When you use your microwave, we want stuff so instant. In my era, we don't use our heart for nothing. You ain't got to think. That's it, Reb. Bye.
Okay. Let me address that. First of all, you're right. Poverty is not predicated on money, just like wealth isn't. However, humility is not the domain of one group of people. You won't find anyone more humble than Native Americans or than Japanese, for that matter. The humility, there are Europeans who are humble, yet the dominating force of Europeans, we've only seen it through the eyes of the Europeans who populated America. If you look at Europe, you will find that in England at the end of slavery, there were a lot of people who were Caucasians who were humble enough to establish education for ex-slaves, and there were people who were humble enough to open their doors and help them get on their feet. Now, this idea of being a Poe Negro, the concept of that has nothing to do with humility, everything to do with money. And even if you look at it from a financial perspective, I doubt very seriously if there is anyone on this phone who grew up poor. I doubt very seriously that anyone who grew up poor. None of us suffered poverty financially, or nor did we suffer poverty spiritually once we understood what the church was doing. We began to mature and grow in great wealth spiritually. Even those who believed what the church was doing were not bankrupt. Why? Because they truly believed that there is a being greater than us. I grew up hearing that white folk don't believe in God and nobody else. White people, the religion, they don't have any religion. Christians. I grew up hearing that all my life. And there were examples pointed to prove that fact, that no matter how many times they go to church or how long they stay in church, it doesn't change them. I can remember hearing my aunts, my grandmama, my cousins say things like white folk be in church all day on Sunday. It don't nothing change them. They're the same person. So that itself is spiritual poverty. I don't want us to get to a place where we paint everyone with the same brush. However, there is something that I'm obligated to teach that is going to appear that way, because at some point, I or some one of us, or several of us, are going to deal with the purpose of melanin and how it affects people around the world, and why and the reason that it is important for us to understand it, and why it was important for the Caucasian to deny it. So I just don't want us to do that. What we were talking about earlier was the disadvantages that were created for females, meaning that it was putting in bondage feminine energy. And we have seen the results of that. The bondage of feminine energy has done one of two things. It has caused females to believe that they are inferior. The other thing is, it has caused females to try to be masculine. Now, when I speak of poverty, when we grew up, we thought we were poor, but the only thing that made us feel like we were poor is because we wanted what we saw white folk with. And I'm not talking about the ones who were dirt poor themselves. I'm talking about the ones who were paraded before us. We wanted what they had. That's what made us feel like we were poor, but we were not. I'm done. Now, I can go for days with that, but I'm done.
Yep. I think even more, there's been a spillover from, going back to what we were talking about earlier, spillover from religion and Christianity into everyday life. But I think that's also the thing that has gotten a lot of Caucasians stuck, in regards that religion did not look like everyday life. In other words, when someone went to church and they felt a certain sense of authority and power there, but when they got back to everyday society, even they were sort of level set by finances and everything else. And so what you said on Sundays, what they heard on Sundays and came back to during the week, they were still two different people, because there was always this for them, always they need to kind of level set to find their place. I think everybody, no matter what race or creed we are, everybody's trying to figure out their purpose. And the problem is everybody's not looking in the same place. And just really what I've felt and seen since being a person, a member of this body, Greater New Faith Foundation, is the thing that I've seen is that we've always been given the power, and we search now within ourselves for that power, but other people are trying to find their purpose, and they're still trying to find it from an outside source. So just trying to tie into what you said about the religious aspect of it, and people trying to get their country back, quote unquote. I think it's just another way of trying to figure out their purpose and trying to find the power of that purpose, but it's still the energy's not directed in the right place. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Ron said something to me this week that he told me about something he was exploring. He's at work now. But what he said is, white privilege is a curse. And he went on to say that he felt as though it's a curse because it keeps white folks stuck. Yeah, I would say that the desire for privilege by the African is also a way of being stuck. Because the question becomes, what privilege are you seeking? And if white privilege is a curse and we see what it looks like, and we're seeking to have what white people have and to have the power, the money, etc., then we're stuck also by the same curse of seeking a privilege that has always been denied us. It's like the horse and the carrot. You never catch up to it, or the rabbit on the race of the greyhound track. You never catch up to it, and that's what keeps you stuck. You're like a rat on a trellis, trying to keep up, and we do things of that nature without even thinking about it. And please let me reiterate this. I know I've said it before. When you are trying to be like someone or a group of people, that becomes your God. That becomes your creator. Because you're making an attempt to create yourself in their image. So this idea of being stuck became even more clearer to me when Ron made that statement about the white privilege issue. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's sort of what this dawned on me when you were saying that earlier. It's like what we chase is what we is where we put our energy. Where are you putting your time and energy? What are we chasing? What are we trying to connect to? And like I said, so long, so many people, they're trying to connect to what they see, and that's where the lower senses, well, I'll call them, gets us into trouble, because you're able to see what somebody's able to purchase, or a life that they're living that we perceive as just outstanding, and we don't use that intuition to ever to help us look behind the curtain. And when we're just constantly stuck in what we see and what we can touch and what we can visualize from that regard, it has us stuck because we're trying to, like I said, we're trying to attain that. We don't know the means or the route that they took to get there. And it's almost like a contradiction, even with this country contradicts itself. On one hand, it's one nation under God, but then we have all the other things that we talked about this morning too that kind of contradict that. But we kind of contradict ourselves too based on what we chase, and because we are who we are, we're just not aware of it. And when you're chasing the opposite of what you are, it puts you in that, it puts you on the hamster wheel. It gets you in a stuck position. And so I think when mankind in general understands who they are and knows where to search for it, that you have to start within. That alignment has to take place within you. Become unstuck, and you become, more aware of your surroundings. You become more aware of the people around you, and that connection starts to form. But like I said, too many times, like you said, we try to assimilate, we try to become something else, and we use the term distraction in the past. It's something that gets us heading in the opposite direction of where we are supposed to be, and it's where our energy goes, and so it's misplaced energy. And so that's how I view that. Any thoughts or questions on that?
I think you're absolutely right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, ST, this is GC in Philly. when you talk about, energy, and I know we spoke about it in the past, but I think that emotional, regulations in terms of just how, we come to that point of looking at our foundation in terms of our true identity, but more importantly, as you had mentioned earlier, in terms of looking at it as an overview, I think once we can understand that and realize that situations and circumstances that we deal with, every day, gives us an opportunity to appreciate what you have talked about over the weeks in terms of just your self-awareness. And I think that as we can understand our true identity and then begin to deal with the emotional regulations from a standpoint of our self-awareness, then we need to, be able to look at it in that sense in terms of our self-disciplines or spiritual disciplines in terms of how we do what we do, how we experience what we experience. And then in that, I think it relates to, our social awareness. And I'm just trying to look at what has been said over the weeks, with regards to our emotions, because if we can have a better understanding of how to deal with that, then the decisions that we make that might cause pain, that might cause all of the, the cares of the world in that sense that we get caught up in, I think we are better, or I know for myself, is having a better appreciation to deal, with it more in a logic as far as reasoning, that these are things that we're going to have to deal with. And so how we manage our relationships, how we manage who we are, I think comes back to some of the points that have been stressed over these several, weeks, or months in terms of our emotional regulations, how we deal with things from a mental, spiritual, physical, and from a soulful standpoint. But I believe that as we mentioned earlier, how are we relating it to today's time and society? And I think that we are experiencing that in different ways. And I can see it, in my relationship with humanity in terms of those that I have an opportunity to associate with, to be engaged with. And I think that true identity is an important piece. And then at the same time, how we emotionally deal with that is important. And so I just, again, wanted to share those thoughts that I think that we all, are seeking that true identity. And once we can come to that point of reference, or at least be open to listen, I think it will help us in terms of the decisions and the things that we do, the things that we say, and how we mediate those situations and circumstances. So hopefully, again, it resonates, but I think that it all, extends from that true identity and extends from, how we deal with our emotions. So I just wanted to share those thoughts. I'm done.
No, I appreciate it, George. And as you were talking, I was thinking of, we've been kind of tasked with two things and to choose sometimes. And, there's an excitement that we can choose, but then what comes next, or there's an awareness. So, in some regards, I ask myself while you were talking, would I rather, be excited, or would I rather just have awareness? And for instance, when President Obama got elected, I think there was an energy of excitement that went through a lot of people, but also with that came an awareness, and the awareness takes over because you realize all the things you have to deal with. So the excitement is good to energize us, for a little bit, but the excitement, as you were speaking, excitement always has to come with awareness. What's the awareness coming with it? And so we do need to be energized at times, as far as spirits being lifted, and the connections we have also definitely energize us, because people will lift you up sometimes when you're down. But I think more so having this awareness is probably one of the most important things we can have, because the awareness will always endure, because the expansion comes with the awareness. The blinders are off. There's no more tunnel vision, and you see all the things that you have to deal with. And we may not be able to deal with it all at the same time. It may be a couple of issues here, but that's why we also center ourselves to know what takes the priority, and if we do things in a certain order, maybe it will be a domino effect to take care more than we thought of. But as you were speaking, about the emotional part of it, we do seek that the excitement. We just can't get lost in excitement all the time. But I just saw like we need excitement for energy, but we also need that awareness to sustain us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and ST it does, and I think over a period of time, we have talked about certain aspects of what's happening in terms of world views. But as you mentioned, President Obama, then we talked about Trump, we talked about COVID. I think there's a lot of things that are happening in terms of just stirring up the spirit, or stirring up this pot, so to speak. And I think that as we look at what we call religion that we know is man-made, when we seek the spiritual truths and the desires, of our heart, I believe that, again, we're coming into an awareness, into a oneness, that we can have a sense of peace, to know that it's for the reasons of our having this opportunity to be engaged, that we are sort of coming or growing through it, where we can have more of a sense of knowing that it's not for the purpose of anything negative, but it's for the purpose of good, of us being able to realize, how, again, the system, or the racism, or in terms of just religion, how it has caused that division. So again, there's just a lot to think about, but I appreciate, the direction that you're taking us in terms of looking at the intuition and looking at the eighth sense.
While you were talking, the both of you really were talking, what kept coming to mind is a question. Why is it that COVID is continuing? What is it that makes it persistent and causes us to rethink not just our lives, but all the plans of our lives as well? It seems that every time we feel like it's beginning to subside, another variant appears. However, now what we are seeing is that the prevalence of it is being hidden because we don't see numbers anymore. And I think the hiding of it is systemic. Didn't think about it before, but I think this is systemic in that, and I'm going somewhere with this. I think it's systemic in that the Biden administration and the CDC bowed to corporate America and with the mask mandate on interstate travel. Why? The other thing is, I think that the hiding of the numbers are not just in the mandates being changed, but I also think that that was part of home testing. So the numbers could be more efficiently hidden because no one knows how many people are infected at home. But I also think that the Creator has shown us how deeply embedded the COVID is and how dangerous it can be. And that happened at the press gathering at the White House last week. They're still counting the number of people who contracted COVID from that setting. And what I'm saying is this: the persistency of it, could it possibly be because we have not reached a place in terms of our awareness, have not reached a place where we can be released from what Saturday, Sunday, and Monday and come back together physically? Is it something else that we are to see or to be shown? Is it something that we're missing? I don't think so. But I do believe that a persistency of is directly has a direct connection or tie to the awareness that we seek and the desires of our heart. So I'm at a place now with that. It's been difficult for me to get to this place, believe you me, that I'm settled with not trying to push when we're going to come back together physically. I'm settled with that. Now my thinking in regards to that is we will come back together in due time. Does this go beyond us? Does it also extend to the rest of this nation, in that it causes people to pause? And during that period of pausing, they're shown what's wrong, what needs to be corrected. And a part of that is, as I stated in the beginning, it deals with employment and how employees treat their employers, employers treat their employees. It deals with that. So I do see that our desires being sought after by the extension. By the overall population. I see that happening. Yet I also see that the stalemate with going back together will not be complete until we have some type of completion with the desires for the change in this society. Because employment, as important as it is a foundational change for the benefit of survival. There has to be a spiritual shift as well. And when that spiritual shift begins to take place, we will begin to hear more and more people speaking about the power that's inherent in us and the direction that the universe is guiding us. I hear people talking about the power of the universe more now than ever before. And I'm talking about church folk. Even though they may not understand what they are saying, if they are saying that they're picking it up in the macro, the day will come when they will understand it. So I think all of this is interwoven with the persistency of COVID. If there are any thoughts or questions about this, or if I'm not on track, please let me know. And if there are questions, raise them. If there are comments, if you see it this way, let me hear you. Thank you.
I'll still go back to what Kathy, when she brought the question up, from Revelation and the new heaven, the new earth. I mean, I think we're in this formation of it from a mindset standpoint, because there's just so much going on and happening at the same time that COVID has really allowed it. Because even from just from a mentality standpoint, we've never had this much free time, so to say. I mean, time that's not geared around to travel, gatherings. We're gathering in different ways now, and then things seem to be coming back to normal in regards to that. People are gathering a little more and a little more frequently, but at the same time, there's still an acknowledgement of the change that's going on and taking place. So I think it's just a beginning and a formation of that new heaven, new earth that we talked about in Revelation, and this how things are just kind of forming and coming together.
I see that as, and when you said that, I also remember when Kathy first started talking about sitting with issues before you approach them and getting a clarity on the direction you should take. What also came to mind is that when Barbara talks about taught us really opened up the Ten Commandments. When she opened that up, when I look at it retrospectively, I actually see the law of the universe. The universe is telling us what laws we are bound by in the earth. I do believe that embracing what was taught during that period is to embrace being one with the universe as well as being human, and to live outside of, or to attempt to live outside of those laws brings about confusion. The most chaotic place on earth is the church, because it does not know what it believes and does not understand what it reads. That is not true with our government authorities. They know exactly what they are doing. So I believe that when we live within the confines of that, we also see something else. I remember Kathy talking about the 2 years that Biden had to get this done in terms of influencing the lives of humanity in a positive way. I see all of that tied together with the laws that we are bound by, that has been given to us by the universe. I don't believe that the laws were given to us by us. I believe that the Creator of Elohim gave us those laws. And when I say the Creator of Elohim, I'm talking about the Creator of us. Gave us those laws so that we could function within the confines of them, resulting in more order than chaos. And I am actually waiting to see with excitement, honestly, our next year in this term, or the next few months in this term of Biden. I'm waiting to see what transpires, because I know that something will, but it's something I already try to think about what it's going to look like. I feel like I'm rambling, but anyway, that's what I saw as you were talking. As thanks.
No, thank you. Anybody else? Any other questions or comments? Seems like it seems like the conversations go by so fast, and we get so much in, and it's just like I don't know. There's a shift going on for sure. Any other questions or thoughts? I don't know if that's a good place to put a pin in it for today or not.
I would like to leave this with us. There's a scripture that talks about you have eyes, but cannot see, and ears, and cannot hear. I'm saying stop refusing to see. You have an eye, but you can't see. And I'm speaking not just to humanity at large, but more particularly to us. We have to stop talking about the eye being open and see with that eye that is open. And we have to experience within. That's what the hearing is. It's not hearing an audible conversation or audible directions with our natural ears. So hear and seeing are inextricably connected to each other. The functionality that we are to have in this earth is based upon seeing and hearing. It did not say you have feelings, but you don't feel. It says you have eye, but you have an eye, but you don't see. You have ear, but you don't hear. So please think about it in this manner, or embrace it in that manner. That's the only way that we are going to speed up this change. Okay? Thank you. Questions or comments? Are we done? Yes. Where are we?
Yeah, I was thinking instead of going another route, unless somebody has any questions or comments, it'd be a good place to stop for today.
Thank you, sir. Thank all of you on the phone. Appreciate your presence. Look forward to tomorrow, right?
Yes, sir. I appreciate everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Have a nice day, family.
Everybody.
Be safe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.